The ISS is a science laboratory, and we're up there to do that primary mission. We do a lot of other things, systems maintenance, CVA, spacewalks, but all of that is really to support the platform's mission of doing science as much as we can. And the seat of the soul of how that science is controlled is here at Marshall Space Flight Center. So the payload operations we do on a day-to-day basis is done under the direction of the team here. And that goes very deep, from the radio calls that we do to cameras looking over our shoulders so that they have the same view we do. We have very candid conversations back and forth on open and closed comm. So really the lifeblood of the science we do up there is channeled from down here. So the voice of science ISS is here. It's great.
If you think about, we've had 20 plus years of continuous human presence in space and working across international boundaries, right? Think about the relationships between all of the countries in the world that you can imagine in the last 2.5 decades, and the fact that despite everything that's happened between the countries politically on Earth, we've come together and worked together as one team and keep pushing humanity forward. So we like to think of spaceflight as like rising above literally all of those kinds of things to move humanity into the solar system. We take some of the camera hardware we use home to train with and practice with before flight, and I was just trying to figure it out, and it's like, oh, I'll go shoot some kids sporting events, and those are really dynamic, fast moving events, and I'm like, that's not really applicable to space flight. But then I got up there and I realized it really, really is applicable, because you might have, like when we flew over a hurricane, it's a really dynamic lighting environment, and you might only have 30 seconds to do it because the space station's doing 17,500 miles an hour. And so being able to not have to think and just know where the camera settings are to quickly change for the dynamic environment was a lot of fun. It was a very fast-paced job to take pictures in space. On orbit, do a quick review, and I would hit play. Maybe you have 2,000, 3,000 images on a camera card. I know roughly where I'm looking for, but I had a strategy on orbit where I'd line up like 4 images in a row and just hold the down arrow and just quickly scan for a good one. So I would review some of it. Most of the imagery was downloaded to Houston, and I still have to go through a fair bit of it, but I would go for, I knew where the good ones were. And sometimes you were shooting 20 frames a second to capture like a unique moment. And you knew roughly where that object might be in there. You knew, but you're gonna have a bunch backside and front side that you're not gonna use. I was just trying to pick out a couple to share, and I'm fascinated by it. So I was always trying to learn. So we'd take a picture, and then I would take it back to my crew quarters at night, right? Some people read news, some people do different things. Like, that's how I would just kind of chill out at night, was review imagery and learn from what I did the day prior to take a better picture the next day.
We, in Node 2, have crew quarters that form a circle, and so everything from that kind of proximity to setting up experiments and work environment right next to each other. It takes, when we all get together on orbit, that's just a fraction of the time of our career. The rest of it is spent on the ground, practicing these things, working together in different capacities, and so you get to learn expeditionary behavior that transcends any and all people that you're with. And so we put into practice a lot of that, and we get a lot of experience. Jeanette was mentioning earlier about caves being an analog to the kind of missions that we do, and we do a number of those type of training events where we put into practice these skills that we learn. In how to, basically work together, live together when you're all in the same environment. And then you add in different personalities. You get to learn about each other and in funny and also lighthearted ways. And so it's just about living life and experiencing things together and putting forth, your best effort into being a team.
Even though the U.S. guys are on their side, the Russians are on their side, we talked every day, we interacted every day, we would socialize a few times a week, and that relationship is really key. So it is an international space station. This community has existed for over 20 years, long before current administration here or in Russia or any other country, and we hope that community continues in its current form, that camaraderie, teamwork is part of this human spaceflight community.
The first 2 months, you're kind of like running around doing debriefs. NASA's still taking samples from you, like blood samples and different things. So you're still going through a lot the first 2 months. The last month, it was holidays, and we're just getting back And truly, it's hard to think about what comes next after having sat on orbit and looked out the window, done the research, did the maintenance, taking care of everything on orbit. It was your home. It's hard to think about what comes next after that. So it's a deeper question than like what comes next, because it's hard to surpass what we just did.
The most impactful thing we can do as astronauts isn't necessarily always going to space. It's working on the programs on the ground, doing the acquisition of the new spacecraft, getting ready to go to the moon, looking at the 2 different landers we're working on, going through those programs, assessing that the human system integration of those programs. So the work we do on the ground once we have spaceflight experience is probably almost more important to moving humanity forward than actually flying in space. And we want to support those that are going right now.
All the changes that I mentioned that happen in the human body, some of them we understand well, a lot of them we really have no clue. So a lot of our studies are on the mechanistic understanding of how the cardiovascular system regulates, or how the eye and the brain work together. And we really need to know that kind of stuff if we want to go further for longer periods of time. So for me, the human studies on that, the immune system, bones, muscle, I think those are amazing. And we've really just scratched the surface on some of those. But that's just the human life sciences. There's a lot more to it than that.
We also did quite a few experiments with plants. So there were quite a few things we could do with plants just to figure out how do they grow. For example, the plant UVB. So we looked at plants under different UV lights. And we could do it kind of rapidly based on the plants that they selected. But the experiment involved looking at it in micro-G and 1G. We had also another plant project that we did here with the pods here. And that was amazing because we got to see basically it was grass that we were growing. And so there were quite a few things that we got to do as far as plants. But the immunity assay one was the one that I really loved. That was my absolute favorite one. But that's where we took our own blood and we did all the processing on orbit so that we can look at the immune function from before we launch, during the entire flight, and then landing.